All right.
I'm not vain, I'm just vain.
There you go. Hey. Oh my gosh. Get some of that Western sun into the room. I love it. Let's do it.
Yes, yes.
All right.
So yeah, I have questions, of course, but yeah, you know the deal. So
When you're ready.
okay. Hello, my name is Eric Taylor Woodby, and I am here on Insight with Justin Cobb, and we are switching things up a bit. And instead of him interviewing me, I am interviewing him, which I'm looking forward to this conversation because Justin is a great person, and it'd be great to find out a bit more who he is and why he created this great platform. So, hey, Justin, how are you?
Oh, Eric, I'm doing well. Thank you for that intro, and thank you for coming on to the show today. I appreciate it.
No, no, I was looking forward to it very much, and thank you for rescheduling. I think the last time I was very sick, and I was in Gaborone, Botswana, the capital of Botswana, just above South Africa, and it was a combination of I got an they didn't call it an eye infection, but I got something that was going on with my right eye, and then just got really sick. So thank you for allowing us to reschedule this.
Absolutely. I really do feel like we need to create a kinder world, and one of the ways that we can do that is by being the change that we want to see in the world. And you can't always control what other people do, but you can control how you react to it, how you respond to it. And also, I I think about the times where I know I fell under the weather, where I was not healthy, where I needed to change things, change prerogatives, and the empathy and the compassion that I received in my life, I carry that with me, and it really does make a difference. So thank you for being on here. I appreciate it, Eric. Your presence
No,
is
no, you're welcome, very welcome. And yeah, I definitely got that sense when we were able to meet in person in South Africa in Cape Town a few months ago. That was thank you again to Regari Gomo for initiating the introductions between the two of us. But that was one of the things that I got from you is that your passion for positive change and also for, as you mentioned, making sure that all of us are comfortable in whatever space that we're in. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, for people, and I'm speaking from personal experience, and I'm sure we can dive into that as we
Mhm.
go forward in the interview. But for me, I know what it's like to be in spaces where you can't be who you are. What you are is frowned on, it's shamed, it's misunderstood. I also know what it's like to be a person who is also guilty of doing things and like being judgmental. And I have experienced being one of those people who has contributed to some of the negativity. What changed was not only me going through my own trials and taking ownership of my trials, but also I opened the door so that way I can not only understand myself, but learn about my own position through the thoughts and the voices of others, contributing to something and receiving the feedback, hearing the stories, learning that regardless of what our categories and labels and titles are, it is the choices that we make that define who we are. That once I learned all this, it made navigating different spaces. I I don't even know if I want to say easier because sometimes we do enter environments where it's just hard and it can be hard for so many reasons. But living in that ability is so key to what I do and how I approach my work. So I'm grateful that I've been doing this work because not only am I gathering stories, not only am I learning about different scenarios happening across the globe, but I'm also learning more about myself in the process. It's been a very humbling experience, to say the least.
I definitely want to ask you more about your work and your platforms and insight, but just to maybe keep it in line with what you just shared, where does that come from? This awareness that to the best of your ability that you can be there for yourself first and foremost, but to be there for others.
Hmm. You know, it's a journey, it's a process. So for me, it started in Pennsylvania, where I was growing up. And for those of you tuning in, if you don't know where Pennsylvania is, it is a state in the US, and we're south of New York. We're right above Maryland in the DC area. It's just a little stretch of very wooded land that has like two major cities on either side of it, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Some of you might be familiar with those places. I didn't come from the city parts. I came from the middle part of it where it's woods and cows and farms and everything. For me, growing up in that kind of environment and being in this very traditional setting where, again, people don't even understand the nuances of gay because it's not in their vocabulary, it's not in their lexicon. It's very much a rigid patriarchal tradition where like there's man, there's woman, and men are supposed to be with women, the whole nine yards. But just knowing that I didn't fit within that paradigm was honestly, as alienating as it was, it opened the door for me to explore empathy and interconnectedness because now I'm in a space where I understand what that is like. And I know how that felt. And for me, it was always about, okay, how can I give that compassion to myself? Because now I am in a space where how to I don't know how things are going to go, but I know that to deny who I am is only going to harm me in the long run, and it will cost me more than anything. How do I do that without also perpetuating that harm onto other people? Because that is the one thing I don't think we talk about enough in our discourse is how each and every one of us, we have the power not only to uplift other people, to be kind to other people, how to share space and build community with people, but we also have that ability to do it the opposite. And we see it a lot within our various circles. We see it in LGBTQ circles where trans and queer individuals are typically the targets of a lot of our cisgender peers within the LGBTQ space. We see it in a lot of progressive circles where people like women, like people of different racial and ethnic categories, all of these folks are typically sidelined, even in a movement that is supposed to be uplifting all of us and aspiring towards greater equity, greater justice. And a lot of that comes from our own experiences and us not having done the internal work within ourselves to recognize, oh, wait, I am actually now participating in some of these behaviors that have been implemented onto me. Learning how to navigate that has been so instrumental in my own work in building insights. And even in the past, with some of my previous employers, understanding that we have nuances, we have different ways of being. How do we make sure, though, that our different ways of being don't malign, whether intentionally or unintentionally? How do we make sure that that is a space where we can grow together as people and foster that humanity? That's where a lot of this comes from.
When did you become aware of your uniqueness as a member of the LGBTQ plus community?
I love that question. For me, it was a journey and it was a hard one. But I remember even noticing it as a kid, probably when I was like 12 or 13. We all go through puberty and we all go through all these growths and everything. And I remember having so much like discomfort around who I was. And these spaces. And I was very painfully shy as a kid. You wouldn't know it now because I've been taught to anybody and everybody, but as a kid, I was painfully shy. But a lot of the reasons why now looking back on it, why I was so like afraid was because of the fact that I was carrying a lot of intense shame around who I was. I was I remember going into the locker rooms as a kid and trying to like hide myself. I would like change in the bathroom stalls and everything just to like make sure I would like no one could see me and I couldn't see anybody. And a lot of people may not understand that, but for those who don't quite get a grasp of what that means, it when you are a member of our community, it's so challenging because you're not only receiving hatred, but you're receiving backhanded remarks, you're receiving all this negative feedback, and a lot of people don't, whether they realize it or not. And here's the thing, I hate to break to folks, a lot of what we are going through, a lot of it is intentional, not all of it, but a lot of it is. And it's so hard when you, especially as a kid, and you don't have that sense of purpose, you don't have that sense of dignity that you develop over time, you don't have that sense of fortitude and resilience, because those are like when you're a kid, that's when you're learning these and that's when you develop that. But I remember going through all these experiences as a teenager, feeling so alienated, feeling so weird about myself, not understanding what was going on. I found community in the theater. I found community in the theater of all places. It was one of the only extracurricular activities I ever gotten involved in. I didn't really start getting active until later in life as an adult, when I started realizing, oh, wait a minute, my mental health and my body and my spiritual health are all connected to each other. Whoa. But at the time, I didn't even make those connections. So I went into theater, and I remember even just interacting with my peers in the theater and how everything was like, it was just a completely different contrast from what I was being raised with as a child. I was being raised with this very narrow traditional view of how you're supposed to live your life in accordance to scripture and God. And then meanwhile, I'm working with folks who are free and they just do what they are comfortable with. And that took a lot of reconciliation with myself. And I remember people would spread rumors about me, and I was always like, no, no, I'm not gay, I'm not gay. Everyone knows I'm gay. I'm the one who hasn't figured it out that I'm gay, but everyone else figured it out. It was so enlightening by the time I got into college, though, because I managed to move away. I went to a different part of the states in school, and that was when I was able to explore who I was in an environment that was safe for me to do so. That was when I started building connections with men. And that was when I started building like community with people who cared about the things that I cared about. It was when I was able to really start exploring who I was in my totality. And it wasn't easy. And there was a lot of unlearning I had to do in that process. And in a lot of ways, I feel like we're all unlearning. Development doesn't stop for anybody at any age. Literally, until the moment you go into the grave, you're still going. So for me, it was it was so it was these early experiences that I eventually put into fruition as a college student. I, I remember finally just owning the fact that I was gay at the age of 20. And actually, I didn't even call myself gay back then. I would switch between like bi and pansexual. And then it wouldn't be until like 22, 23 when I finally just said, you know what, I'm gay. that's how it is. But it was a learning curve, to be sure, and it made and it was rough. But I think about where I came from and where I'm at now, and I say, you know what? Good for you, younger Justin. You did it. Look at all those storms.
That's great. You said was a lot, and I like how you tied in later about how we're evolving because was what I get from that, just from relating to a lot of what you shared, is, as you said, we're always evolving, and who I was at 12, who I was at 20 is not who I am today. And especially when you're someone like you who's always open to uncovering and discovering and also embracing who you are. So yeah, I really like the way you put that. Um, you are, from Pennsylvania, but you're based, if I remember correctly, in the DMV area. I was at DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I have family in that area of Maryland, so I kind of know a little bit about that. But is that where when you went to that part of the US, is that when you started Insight?
No, so it actually, I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. Like, did I found an insight here in like the DMV area, like as a part of like, is that factoring into the journey? Like,
Yes, yes.
okay, yes. So there, let me rephrase. Yes. So I moved down here to the DMV area, and I actually lived down here for, oh my goodness, I'm going to be 6 years in the DMV area. It's like in October next year. Oh my goodness. But um, so I've already lived in this area for about 5 years when I founded Insights. And during those 5 years, it was 2019 when I first moved here. I was an intern. I worked with the National Hispanic Caucus of state legislators. So I got to travel and I got to work with all these legislators across the United States of Latin and Hispanic descent who were working on advocating for their communities. And I came out of that experience spending my summer in DC saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to live here. And I said this not realizing how hard it was going to be, but also just having this feeling inside me saying, hey, this is where you need to go. And I took that leap of faith, and it has been so hard. Because right in 2020, you have the pandemic, and that sweeps through. I ended up at the time I was working as an independent contractor, which is where a lot of my own entrepreneurship interests really started to take hold. It was as an independent contractor. I had to keep my own book of business, but I remember they let us go. The government let us go from that job because of the pandemic, and I ended up falling and spiraling, and I started doing a bunch of retail jobs, delivery jobs. That was hard, and I remember just having to ride my bike across the DC area, all these different neighborhoods on a bike, in the middle of a crisis, and making deliveries, bringing food door to door, and barely scraping up enough money to pay rent, to pay my phone bill, to pay basic necessities, and having to do that again and again and again for this. It happened back in March, and I was literally stuck in that flux for nearly, I was for up until October, so quite a few, like 4 or 5 months, if my math is right. So, and picked up a retail job in order to help supplement things, help keep things going. That it helped me because I developed a lot of my customer service skills from that work, and my ability to relate to people really comes from that development that I had early in my career. I ended up working in odd jobs here and there for different companies here in the DMV area. And I'm a very perceptive person. I'm very observant, and I noticed it, regardless of where I was at in the workplace, the same themes kept on coming up about how people were struggling with their work. They were struggling with building community. I noticed tensions, not just within the workforce, but also things that people were going through, like in their own personal lives. I won't share stories to maintain that privacy for these folks, but just this the observation that I had, I carried that with me. And it was actually one of through conversation that I had with people that someone said, "Oh, Justin, you know, you would be really great as a inclusion consultant." So I said, okay, yeah. I ended up interning for a company, Change Catalyst. Thank you, Melinda. Appreciate you. But under Melinda's guidance, I learned how to essentially consult with these companies on inclusion strategies. And I took that work with me. I founded Insights after all this. I thought I found a position that I could do that work for the first time. And then I spiraled out because of my work. It got me in trouble with my employer, and I ended up getting fired. And that was a really humbling lesson for me. Who I was, I thought I knew what I was going to do and what I was going to achieve. And suddenly you go from, oh, I made it, to back to the beginning. Oh my gosh, like the fall. And then there were other things happening in my life at that time. And they were, as they happened, it was like, boom, I fell another level and another. And just when I thought I hit rock bottom, life was like, oh, you haven't even reached the bottom of it. Here you go. And it ripped it out. Yeah, again. So, and then insight actually came when I finally hit the bottom, because I was literally at a point where I didn't know how to process feeling, my emotions, what I was going through. I sat down with myself and I was like, I have no idea. And the beautiful thing about community is that community helps find who you are when you don't really know where you're supposed to go. And I remember asking one of my friends about like what he thought I should do, and he said, "Well, you're a writer, aren't you? You're an artist. Why don't you like make a blog? Talk about what you're going through. Talk about what you love to explore, because that's who you are. You never know, something might happen." I was like, you know what? Why not? And that was how Insight was founded. It was based off of all of these struggles that I myself had been through, and just not having an avenue or outlet to really put down all these thoughts to print. And then I did, and that's where we got to this day.
You know, in your bio for on LinkedIn, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this before. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion. I've seen that plenty of times, especially in the last few years. But you also add allyship, and I'd never seen that before. Um, why was that important to add that? Because I think for me, that just kind of was a hook to say, oh, maybe because I'm used to seeing diversity, equity, inclusion, it's kind of lost its power. But seeing allyship in there, um, in line with this conversation right now, just makes me think that the person who's behind this is committed, definitely. But I get a sense that I don't know. I just asked why was it important to add that?
We would be nothing without our community. And I don't mean that to say is we are nothing in that of ourselves,
Mm.
because each and every one of us has dignity. We bring something of value, and we are here for a purpose. I lean into this idea that regardless of what our traditions are, regardless of our sense of like identity and value, each and every one of us can make a difference in this life. And we are actually brought into this world to help contribute to that difference, if we so choose. For me, I think about how I had allies in my life that really helped get me to where I needed to go. And they served as mirrors, they served as a console, they served as advisors. And I would not be here without them. I had them when I was in college, and I was still struggling to find who I was in the midst of doing what every student is supposed to do, which is go in, study, learn, get your skills, come out of there with this education, get your degrees. And then on top of that, you throw in, oh, hey, I'm a small town kid from Pennsylvania, and I'm a first generation college student, and I'm gay. Oh my God, there's so much going on here. Like, how to like help? I don't know what I'm doing. But when you have this community here, they have already been through it. They know what life is like, and they've already been through the ringer a few times, so they know that things are going to be okay. Like maybe they're not okay now, but they're going to get there. And it's about leaning into that because we need each other and our allies. I think about how with the LGBTQ movement, for instance, a lot of the work, we wouldn't have gotten to where we were without our allies. Yes, we have amazing gifts, we have talents, we have skills, but there we got to remember, even just back in the 60s and 70s, how stigmatized our community was. We were shamed to a point where you had to be in the closet and to even just come out and say that, hey, I am gay or I'm lesbian or trans or whatever. To say that, it was a death sentence to your career. It was a death sentence to like in your community, because think about all the ostracization that took place within these communities. White, black, Latina, you name it. We all have that experience of this segment of society that just says, you know what, no, you're gay, like we can't associate with you now. And but it is thanks in large part to the allyship that we have, that we managed to propel this movement into what it is today. And now we see them trying to bring us back into those days. And they're trying to use us against each other in the process. They know that when we come together as a community, there is nothing that we can't achieve, nothing that we can't accomplish. So they're always looking for little ways to tear us apart, so that way we can't show up for ourselves and for each other. But we have to push back against this narrative. And I tell people all the time too, this is a wisdom that I learned from Melinda as well. So I want to spotlight her because she did a lot of the legwork in this. And now I'm basically honing in on what she said. But we all have the potential to be allies to one another because nobody is powerless. All people have a voice, all people have agency, all people have the ability to choose to do something different. And we can all aspire to be there for each other. And yes, we may all have different levels of privilege and prestige because of what we look like or how we speak or how we conduct ourselves in our day-to-day affairs. We can also be allies for other people too.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really like the way you put that because it helps me to expand what allyship means in my own life.
Hello everyone, this is Justin Cobb, and that was Erick Woodby. He's fantastic. I'm grateful he came on to the show today to serve as the guest interviewer. It's not often that I get to sit and be interviewed, so I always appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts. And especially with such insightful questions coming from an inquisitive person such as him, definitely go ahead and take a look at his profile. I'll drop that in the comments for you all. And of course, support insights. Subscribe to this channel, help us grow, And don't forget to like and comment. Let us all know what you think. Also, don't forget to check out our other content as well. We're available on Medium and on Spotify. You'll find exclusive insights you won't find anywhere else. And be sure to stay tuned for more insight. There's plenty more coming. Until then, be well.